Hi there, this is Linda and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. In this video, I'm putting together my Project Life spread for the week of February 22nd through February 27th, 2025, and this was covering our trip to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so this spread covers my trip to Dubai and Abu Dhabi, so the United Arab Emirates, but I really just went to those two Emirates, which are the most popular, most famous ones. I spent 4 days in Dubai and 1 day in Abu Dhabi. So this is mostly Dubai, which is why I have that written on there. But I decided I'm going to include both of these in one spread, and I'm going to include an insert because I have more photos, which I need to go grab that, and I'm going to do that in a moment. But before I do that, I just kind of wanted to talk through what my initial plan was. So if you watched recently, I shared the week prior, which is the week that I went to Doha, Qatar, which was part of the same trip. I went there first and then I came to Dubai. And for that one, I used a kit, and that was really my basic layout for the spread. For this one, I did not have a kit in mind, and I didn't really have any kits I really specifically wanted to use. I didn't have any travel kits, so I wanted to just look through my stash and use up some stash products. So I went over to my stash and I found a couple of things. The first thing I found were these 3 gold arrows. These are from, I believe, the Go Story Kit, probably from like 2016. So they've been sitting in my stash for a long time. And I was looking at these and I thought they would fit really well into 3x4 or 4x6 pockets to fill these 3 pockets. So I decided I'm going to put this one on top of this photo, and then these 2 I'm going to put on pattern paper, and one of them is going to have the dates and the other one is going to have the locations. I'm thinking actually this one will have the dates and this one will have the locations. Then I went through my stash of cards that were related to travel, and I pulled out a handful of filler. There's a couple of filler ones here and some journaling cards, and I'm going to use some of these to tell the story about this trip. So I'm thinking this one will be good for kind of like the adventure, just like the basic overview. And then, like I said, I have 4 days in Dubai and 1 in Abu Dhabi, so I'm thinking I'm going to pick like 4 of these or 5 of these, 1 for each day. Not entirely sure though. Like I'll think about how I want to do that. And then I have a couple filler ones, and then I have just 3x4 photos here that are going to fill in the rest of the pockets. So I will kind of lay them out and figure that out. I need to go get my insert, which is going to be all 3x4s, and it's going to be like 2 across, so it'll have 12 pockets, 6 on each side. And then I'm just going to lay all of these out and figure out how I want this to look. I need to find some pattern paper in my stash to go behind these and figure out how I want to add those titles. But besides that, yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm going to do some handwriting on these, and I'm going to probably look in my stash to find some sort of embellishment to add to some of the 3x4 cards and do some sort of repeated embellishment kind of cluster across some of the photos. So I'm going to go ahead and put you guys in voiceover. I'm going to get that insert, start laying these things out, and figure out kind of how I want this one to come together. Okay, so the first step here was bringing over this insert, and I wanted this to have 6 3x4 pockets on both the front and the back. So I'm just trimming down a 9x12 page protector. In my mind, I feel like the inserts always have to be smaller than 9x12, so it's kind of sandwiched in that week. If I did a full 9x12, it would be 2 separate spreads, but this was a good way to add more photos. I'm going through all of my photos here and just trying to figure out how I wanted to lay them out. Because I have so many photos, I struggled a bit with figuring out what was going to go where, because I kind of wanted to lump things together based on what happened when. So those 2 right there are from the frame, so they happened at the same time. And it turns out that what I did was all of those ones right there on that insert are from the first day. So I decided to do a journaling card and a filler card, I think is what I come up with, to make the front of the insert all about the first full day that we had in Dubai, because we hit quite a few sites that day. On the back of it, I did all of the Abu Dhabi pictures and a filler or journal card about Abu Dhabi. And then on this last page, I decided to kind of mix together everything that happened the rest of the days. So like I said in the intro, I had 4 days in Dubai, but really I would say the first one and the third one were more specific sites. And really the third one was just to the top of the Burj Khalifa. So Dubai has some key sites that you like kind of have to see. So that would be the Frame, the Museum of the Future, and the Burj Khalifa. Then they had a few other things that were highlighted by like tourist stuff online to say, go see this, go see that. And most of those things kind of fell flat for me. So if you are considering a trip to Dubai, well, first of all, stay tuned because I will have a travel and document with me video coming. But if you are considering a trip to Dubai, the must-see things to me were the Frame, the Museum of the Future, and the Burj Khalifa. And if you like shopping, the Dubai Mall, which is connected to the Burj Khalifa. It was very, very nice. So I wanted to kind of highlight that on here. And then you can also see on the back of that insert, those are from Abu Dhabi. There is a palace there and the Grand Mosque, which is the largest decorative mosque I have seen. I have seen some big famous mosques in my life. I would say this one is not that impressive in my opinion because it was built in 2017 as opposed to the ones that I saw last year in Istanbul that were built in like the year 500. Just doesn't compare, but it was still gorgeous and worth a trip. So I'm making some notes here on my sticky note about what happened on each day, just trying to think about what I was going to do as far as my journaling. And you can see I'm looking at my Hobonichi cousin to look through my journaling to figure out what happened on what day and what I wanted to make note of. I looked at both the daily pages and the weekly. As you know, if you followed me, that on my weekly spreads, I do, whether I'm traveling or not, highlight what happened for Project Life, but because the daily spreads for travel are more focused on the facts, I wanted to use those as reference as well. If you want to see more of that, I do have a flip through of my Hobonichi cousin for February that I will link in the description box down below. I went over to my stash and pulled out this pattern paper. This, I believe, was from the Star quarterly scrapbook kit from Ali Edwards from a couple of years ago. So just like these arrows, I'm pulling out some really old supplies, and you guys, I haven't pulled out the oldest supply yet that I'm going to use. You will see that soon. It's got to be at least 10 years old. It's probably more than 10 years old. You'll see. So I wanted to layer these arrows on the Star paper, but this one had this pattern on it and you couldn't really read it on top of the Star paper. So to make it more visible, I adhered it down to some just plain vellum. And I'm cutting out the vellum around the shape of the star. And that's just going to make this star slightly less transparent. So you can actually read the text on top of it, on top of that busy star pattern. And I absolutely love the way it came out. So if you're ever struggling with a transparent piece not being super transparent, adhere it to vellum because it just works like magic. I didn't want to put a lot of adhesive on there because I didn't want the adhesive to shine through. So I just put enough to hold it steady. And then I took it over to my sewing machine and added some stitching right down the middle, both to hold it in place and to be a decorative element. In my sewing machine right now, I have some black thread, which I thought would provide some good color, or not really color, but a dark element to this arrow. So it doesn't look like I'm trying to hide the stitching. Then I pulled this tray out with my labels because I wanted a label to add the dates on. And I have these labels. I don't know what they were from. I think it was from the label scrapbook kit from Ali Edwards. And so I have a lot of those in there. And I wanted to find a smaller one to put the dates on. So I'm using my rolling date stamp, but I couldn't find a label that was super small. And also this arrow is pretty big, so I felt like having a larger label made sense. But I had left some space at the top, and my plan was to look into my stash and pull out a geotag. This is something I want to kind of share, is that when I'm scrapbooking like this, I'm thinking I want a geotag here. That is a shape I reach for a lot, and I don't have a lot of them in my stash. So anytime there's a release of scrapbooking products and there's some cute geotags, I want to buy them. In contrast, I have more hearts and stars than I could ever use. So I'm just trying to keep that in mind while scrapbooking so that when I shop for products, I can be more mindful about what I'm purchasing. I added that second arrow right on top of the picture of the Grand Mosque. And for that one and this one, I'm just adding the rolling adhesive behind the gold so it doesn't shine through. And for this last one, I am again going to run it through my sewing machine so that it mirrors the top one to add the title on this. So I'm going to write Dubai and Abu Dhabi on top of this. And I considered stamping on vellum and cutting it out because you guys know that that is one of my favorite go-to techniques, but I wanted to do something different and I wanted more color. So this is where I pulled the oldest supply out. I pulled out some old thickers, and I have to say these are probably from like 2010, maybe 12 or so, but you can see they're no longer sticky. So when I was touching them, they're slightly tacky on the back, but they don't stick to the backing. And you can see like everything on the back just kind of fell off. So that makes them just more like chipboard pieces than stickers, which actually was really nice because I could just lay them out on the desk before I stuck them down. And what I end up doing is pulling them all off the sheet because they don't really work on the sheet anymore, and putting the leftover ones in a tray that I added into my embellishment organization. And I'm thinking that maybe that will help me use them a bit more. So I want to start using some of these older supplies more often. So I really liked this kind of blast from the past to pull out some of these scrapbooking products from years ago, especially these old thickers. But here you can see I'm putting them into this tray. So they are slightly sticky, but not to the point where they are going to actually adhere to each other. And because they're not sticky, like they're not going to stick down on my project, I'm going to have to use some adhesive, which I will do in a moment after I get all of these off of the tray. But I'm thinking that this will help me use them. I know it's a little annoying because you can't see what letters you have. So I don't know. But having them on the sheet wasn't working because they were just falling off. Do any of you guys still have thickers in your stash, and are you still using them? How are you storing them? I'm curious to hear because I want to use up some of these older supplies. So now I'm going to work on adhering these down on top of my arrow. So my plan is to put the Dubai and on the top half above the line and the Abu Dhabi on the bottom. I'm using my rolling adhesive first, and it was a little annoying because it wasn't rolling out very well on there, and then it was sticking through like the holes, so I had to like pull it off. And so I think I got through just the 3 letters. So you can see my rolling adhesive isn't even working. So I decided to pull over a liquid adhesive, and I tend to not use liquid adhesive. I really like rolling adhesive or red line tape because they're just cleaner. But sometimes you need this like fine liquid adhesive, and this one is a great one if you are looking for a liquid adhesive to adhere some smaller pieces like this. I will link this in my description box down below as one of the supplies that I use. I do really like it. So I'm adding the Dubai and Abu Dhabi down here, just 1 letter at a time. And I'm starting from the left so that they're going to be left aligned on the arrow. So I'm not worried about centering them. These thickers also varied in color, so I had a little bit of fun when laying them out in advance to make sure that the colors were not like 2 of the same color weren't touching each other, and to have it just be kind of look random when it's obviously not actually random, because if it was random, some of the ones that were the same color would actually be touching. Next, I'm moving on to this Adventure Awaits card. So I believe this card was from Everyday Explorers. I think it was designed by Geraldine C. And yeah, I believe it was Everyday Explorers, but I'm not positive. I think that Field Notes one also went with it. And so I was just super excited to pull some of these older cards out of my stash. This one had some spots on here for you to put the date, the location, and your flight number. So I put UAE because that's where we went, February, and then I just put Qatar because we flew Qatar Airlines, because I wasn't going to put my flight number because I don't remember it, and also I had like 4 flights to get there and get home, so it just didn't make sense to add flight numbers. So I was just journaling here about an overview of what this trip was and that we came from Qatar and why we went and that kind of stuff on this card as like an introductory piece. So in the beginning of this video, I talked about my journaling and how I was thinking about doing 1 journaling card per day. And I end up not doing that because I wanted to break my journaling up more by theme.
And that's how I typically do my journaling on my project life. I don't do, this is what I did on day 1, on day 2, but I do typically do it that way for travel. So these last 2 spreads that I did, this one and the one that I shared previously for Doha, were a little bit of a change from how I've done these types of spreads in the past because I didn't do my journaling one day at a time. I'll talk more about that in a moment, but for now I've decided to come up with what my embellishment cluster was going to be. So I talked about that in the beginning, that I wanted to create a repeated embellishment cluster across quite a few of my photos to have something to just add a little bit to them so they weren't just plain photos. When creating an embellishment cluster, I want some flat pieces that can be layered, and then I want something dimensional. So I went with a piece of this washi tape, a word phrase strip, and then one of these chipboard stars. I think these chipboard stars were from the outdoor collection from Ali Edwards. This word phrase strip was also from Ali Edwards. It's an older one. And this washi tape, I believe, is from Coco Daisy. I wanted to do just a basic washi tape, and this blue color really worked with the alphas I used for the title, and on some of my journaling cards, I have like the yellows and the blues coming in from the different products that I pulled. So when I'm mixing from different kits, I'm trying to pull some of the same colors so that they coordinate. So on this one, I do my journaling about day 1 because day 1 was a very specific, we had a very strict itinerary on day 1 because there were some key sites that we wanted to see. We wanted to go to the Frame, we wanted to go to the Museum of the Future, we wanted to go to a mosque tour. And I don't actually have any photos from that I included in the spread, but we've visited a few Arabic countries that are Muslim countries over the last year, and we're going to another one later this year. And so we're going to be visiting quite a few mosques. And I would say the one that we saw in Dubai was the least impressive mosque. However, it came with a mosque tour with a tour guide who was very good at teaching about Islam. So I am not Muslim myself, so I don't know a ton about Islam. I know some, but when we visited Istanbul and we visited the mosque in Abu Dhabi, we were there kind of seeing the beautiful mosque, but we didn't really learn much and there weren't really tour guides. So this one was really nice because the guide really talked about Islam and he talked about, the principles and why the mosque is designed the way it is and how it works. And it was just a very good experience. So if you do go to Dubai, I highly recommend visiting the Jumeirah Mosque. It was a great tour, even though the mosque itself was not nearly as impressive as some other ones. Next, I wanted to put a chipboard piece on this filler card. So this was just a card I pulled from my stash. I honestly don't know who it's from. I think Kelly Perky, but I'm not sure. And I wanted to put a chipboard piece on it. So I'm going in my drawer below the desk here and pulling out various chipboard pieces, trying them out. And I was thinking about doing that one. I just struggled to find one that worked. I wanted a larger one, and looking through my travel ones, a lot of them were either too specific that didn't fit what was going on, or they were too small. So then I went through my random ones, and this one just says imperfect and awesome. And honestly, it wasn't great, but it worked. The colors worked. The size worked. I think I need some more large chipboard. So that's something to keep in mind. I like doing those filler cards with one large embellishment in the middle. So I'm going to keep that in mind. Sorry for reaching across my desk there. When I tried to put this one in, the star shot off my page onto my windowsill. And so I'm just slipping these in the pockets. When working on a project life spread, I tend to not slip things in the pockets till the very end, but when I'm working with an insert, I do, just so I can move it out of the way to have more space to create. Now I'm on the back of my insert, and this is about Abu Dhabi. So I have this out and about tag, which I believe is from Everyday Explorers, designed by Geraldine C. And I did some stamping on here. It had place for the location and the date, which I thought was kind of fun to stamp on there in that way. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of journaling about our day trip to Abu Dhabi and where we visited and kind of how that went. So we went to see a palace, the presidential palace, and the Grand Mosque, which were both amazing sites. There were also a few other photo ops, and we had a really good lunch. It was Pakistani food, I believe, and it was very delicious. So I just journaled about that on here, and I'm going to add that along with my photos. I have a few with my boyfriend, so that's why those ones are covered up. And those two at the top I put are from the Grand Mosque. No, those are from the Presidential Palace, and then the other three are from the Grand Mosque. So I wanted to kind of split them up based on location so that I could in the future remember which ones were which. And then I'm just going ahead and adding some embellishments onto a few of the photos. I didn't want to add it on too many of these because these were just such beautiful photos. In my opinion, I wanted to just kind of leave them as is, but I wanted something so that it wasn't just a plain photos in pockets, which although plain photos in pockets looks great, especially when you have some beautiful travel photography, sometimes I don't know, I just want something in the pockets. Next, I wanted to add a tab on here because when I do an insert, I like to add a tab so that when you're flipping through the album, you are kind of pointed to the fact that there is an insert that you need to flip. I'm just using an Avery index tab. This is the 1-inch size, and I pulled over a stamp. I believe this is the Enjoy Story stamp. It was just one that was nearby on my desk, and picked something to add a sentiment in here. I think it was just like enjoying this or something like that. It was a very general sentiment, and I stamped it on both sides, and I'm going to add that onto this insert so that you know to flip the page. Next, I'm going to move on to the final page in this spread, the right-hand side, which is the rest of my photos from Dubai. So the insert, like I said, covered a summary of what happened on the first day in Dubai and the day we went to Abu Dhabi, which was the third day of our trip. But there were 3 more days in Dubai. And like I said, there wasn't specific things I wanted to document for each day. Some of them we went to see a few things. One of the days I went to the top of the Burj Khalifa and we went shopping. We went to see a few other sites that were kind of duds. And we spent some time relaxing by the pool because in February, the weather is really nice in Dubai. There was actually one day that was 90 degrees, which was pretty hot, but perfect pool weather. So what I decided to do instead was break my journaling up by themes. So this orange card here that says Gone Exploring, I decided to use to write out 7 of the sites that we went to see. And so I'm using a sticky note here to break them out because we did stop and see more than 7 things during our time in Dubai. So I had to narrow down the list. But essentially what I'm going to do is write out 7 of the sites we went to see. And then I'm going to put a star next to the ones that I thought were worth a visit. So I would say it was probably about 50% of what we did was worth a visit. And, maybe that was just me not knowing what to see in Dubai. I have definitely gotten some mixed reviews after I've gone from people either agreeing with my assessment or people saying that I didn't give the city a fair chance. And I definitely could see how you could like it. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but this was just my own personal perspective from Dubai, that there were some things that I'm happy that I saw. I'm happy I was able to check this city off my bucket list, but a lot of it was not worth a visit and was actually kind of annoying because it was very hard to get around the city. It was very crowded. Things weren't well marked. And yes, it's a different country and English is not their primary language, but things weren't well marked in any language. They just weren't marked. So it was definitely an experience. It's also a very safe city, a very clean city. So those were nice parts, but I overall wouldn't recommend it as someone who travels quite a bit and has been a lot of places throughout the world and has a lot more places to visit. So on this card here, I'm writing about the day that we went to the top of the Burj Khalifa and went to the Dubai Mall, which I absolutely loved the mall. So I like shopping, but I struggle to find clothing that I like when I go shopping around home because a lot of things are really revealing. Like there's a lot of crop tops and I'm almost 40. I don't want to wear a crop top, but I want some nice clothes. And I'm also super petite. So I struggle to find things that fit me. And shopping in Dubai was amazing because things were well styled without being overly revealing. Things were in my size. I just loved it. I wish I could go to that mall regularly. So that was one huge unexpected perk of Dubai. So I did write about that. On here, this card that says official travelogue, I added another one of the geotag stickers and I just did some overall journaling about Dubai. So a lot of what I just talked about in terms of my feelings on the city and, what I enjoyed and what I didn't enjoy. And I'm happy that I had kind of that summary card as opposed to a recap of each day, because I don't need that factual recap. I'm probably going to do a travel album and we'll have that in there. I also have my daily journal, so I don't need to reiterate it here. Instead, this spread is intended to be an overview of the trip. I do also plan to share with you guys a travel and document with me video where I did take video around the city of both Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and I'm going to share that with you guys hopefully later this month. So definitely stay tuned for that, especially if this is a city that you're interested in visiting, so you can see some of my tips and thoughts from as someone who visited it for the first time. I'm just going ahead and adding a few more embellishment clusters. A few of these cards I didn't want to add it on because the photos just kind of were really nice. I didn't want to mess them up. Here is a look at that finished spread. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And as always, I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Thank you. Bye.